People believe that JK might have a reaction with a lot of the controversy that's going on with the label and potentially him being insulted. We also have legal action being taken and an update on that and this whole situation, as well as people saying that V and JK might decide to leave the label after all of this has come out. So hey Dumplings, it's Dave Disci, let's get into it. There's been a clip or several screenshots that have resurfaced that have gotten people talking. Specifically, it's a moment in which V did an interview. V did an interview and he talked about his experience with the company. He specifically talks about how he and the company, as well as the group and the company, don't always see eye to eye. They don't always agree with everything that the company does. Apparently, all the members, or at least V and JK, had talked to each other at length about what they wanted to do with their contract and whether or not they wanted to renew it. V mentioned that he and JK cried a lot over this and ultimately decided to go ahead and renew that contract. Of course, that's what we know of right now. The boys are planning the 2025 reunion, so obviously they did renew that contract. This was interesting because it seemed like V was talking about whether he and JK wanted to go solo, and then they ultimately decided that they preferred to be with the other members and that they would actually like to see the members happy. So they went along and renewed the contract. Of course, this might be an idea in which the label mentioned to them to talk about going solo for a bit or indefinitely, whatever it was, we have no idea, and that's why they were debating that. And also keep in mind that this is a translation that I'm extrapolating information from, so that could also not be 100% accurate. But this is interesting because a lot of people were insinuating that this particular thing that was being said was the saying that he, as well as the other members, don't have a good relationship with all of the people on the label. This was then brought up because obviously there is a whole lawsuit going on right now, and a lot of people are wondering what actually is going on inside the label. And clearly with a lot of the documents that are coming out, and a lot of the assumptions that people are making about those documents doesn't put the label in a very good light. And of course, I don't believe that this is true. Now, is it possible to not have a good relationship with a company that you work for? Absolutely. People that are getting upset, I feel like, are people that have never worked in a corporate company before. Because the fact of the matter is, if you have worked at a company before, then you would probably disagree with most of the things that the company does anyway. Who they end up promoting, how they deal with their crisis, maybe even the darker side of the company where they're doing some shady things. This, of course, is inevitable due to how many people that are in a label, and some people feeling like they can get away with illegal things or whatever it is. So this is bound to happen in any company. Now, I don't necessarily know if it's happening in this company or this label, but it can happen in any company. I think it's interesting when people act like this label is the spawn of Satan and that they're doing all these awful things as if most companies aren't doing these things. Also, I want to say that I'm speaking as if these things are true, but we also do not know if they're true. So all of this is alleged. Many people are now saying that the boys, specifically V, are considering leaving the label or even asking them to just leave. They're just saying that they should leave. I don't think that the boys will actually leave because at the end of the day, it was their decision to sign the contract and continue working with the label. I don't think them thinking about signing had anything to do with them not liking the label or thinking that the label were bad people. I think they contemplated signing for many other reasons. Probably some of that was a little bit more selfish. Maybe they did want to think about having a solo career. I have no idea. These are just thoughts. So we actually have an update on the legal action situation. So if you're not aware, not too long ago, there was a YouTuber who allegedly decided to spread a lot of misinformation. And not even just misinformation, because that's one thing, but was spreading a lot of hate towards the BTS members, as well as towards other artists from other groups. When V found out about this, he told everyone publicly that he was going to start taking legal action on this person. It was believed that he did, and then ultimately halted legal action just due to lack of evidence. And then it was believed that they resumed legal action and then won. But this goes a little bit deeper now, because some people have found that there are some alleged leaked documents that have made people really upset. The documents allegedly talk about how the label had been subscribed to this YouTube channel. This is alleged because I don't even think it's possible to prove this. It's quite easy for anyone to sit there and fabricate a document and say that this came from the label. And we're already quite aware that sometimes K-media sites can fabricate or grab information from different places and make a story. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. Some people were alleging that the label used the information from this YouTube channel to somehow create a false narrative about the other artists that they were talking about, like aside from BTS, and trying to get people to attack the other artists from other labels. This tactic is called offensive marketing, and it's where people don't focus on their own products, they just focus on insulting their competition as a form of marketing. So some companies will literally go as far as paying influencers tens of thousands of dollars to insult their competition, which is a pretty risky form of marketing, I think, because oftentimes they won't tell the influencer to talk about their own product at all. So it's a pretty big gamble if the customers or audience will even think about their own brand after the competition is insulted. But a lot of people were saying that this is what the label was doing, and they were using this YouTuber as a way to get information to do that. All of the allegations came out, and people were really upset over the internal documents coming out. The CEO actually came out and pretty much denied a lot of it. There are some things in which we'll talk about in a little bit that they did not fully deny, but then other things like this offensive marketing tactic they completely denied. And I 100% agree with them, or believe them when they say that they did not do that. Then the reason why, because it just simply doesn't make any sense. Why would a label focus their resources on insulting another artist? It wouldn't help their artist at all. Artists and celebrities are different from products, obviously. So while you might hear a bad review about a product and then avoid that product like the plague, the same cannot be said about a celebrity. People love to watch a celebrity fail, so even if it's bad press, it still helps the celebrity. So it makes no sense for a label to attempt to harm their competition in this way, because it would only get their competition more press. This is where some of these rumors just require a little bit of thinking, and then you can kind of realize how silly they are. Now, the CEO did bow his head in an apology when he talked about the internal documents being reviewed, and then there were some insults on there. Keep in mind, these things, again, are translated from one language to another, so a lot of this stuff we actually don't know 100%, but the CEO did say that the contents of the document was highly inappropriate. They were initially using the document as a way to gather information and opinions, but then when it came out, people were able to see how rude and disgusting some of the things in the document were. Some of it being things like insults to other artists, allegedly, and things like that. There were rumors and conversations about the document talking about things like plastic surgery, allegedly, and insulting people's looks and all that stuff. Don't quote me on that 100%. I can't actually read the article myself, and even if I can't understand it by translating it, because there is that language barrier that's still there, and I'm not entirely sure if words like plastic surgery or looks could mean something else in Korean, but then were translated wrong. Like, I have no idea. A lot of people were specifically worried about JK, and they were saying that JK should definitely leave the label now because the label has then insulted him and said awful things about him, specifically saying that all these comments that were made were directed to him. Now, as far as I'm aware, and as I was looking, I could not find any specific artists that the document was referencing. They were not specifically mentioning any groups, not that I know of. They weren't specifically mentioning one particular member of said group, and so people actually have no idea who anyone was being mentioned in the document, who were they referring to. But of course, people can have their assumptions that the comments could be directed towards BTS, and then maybe even a specific member of BTS, just due to the fact that people believe that the label was created by BTS. Now, while this may be true, what isn't true is that everyone on the label is constantly thinking of BTS, because every department has different artists that they work on. And if you're in a department that's working on a different artist, you might never really think about BTS at all. You have to also keep in mind that most people working in the industry, and especially people who I would see that a label would hire, probably aren't people that are just starstruck to be in a building with BTS. They can keep themselves pretty professional, and then on top of that, they probably just work and then go home back to their family or whatever they want to do. So what I'm trying to say here is, even in a company where BTS created this company, people in there probably aren't talking or thinking about BTS all the time, that every little thing would be referencing them. Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out Patreon for more videos, link down below. Thanks for the lovely comment right here. Love you, bye.